A talking point that is generally there to guilt people who potentially want to leave the cult of Christianity is that Jesus was mocked on the cross and, of course, that he died for our sins, allegedly. But the fact that he was mocked on the cross doesn't prove anything. It's meant to make you emotional and feel sympathy for someone who did this big thing for you and apparently not the Jewish people that he actually came for. Have you ever been mocked, bullied, picked on, not believed for your psychotic revelations? Do you feel left out? When you told people your vision of the future, I bet they didn't believe you either, right? What kind of person does Jesus' downfall appeal to? It appeals to someone who is grieving in some way, grieving their own potential, or has a wound around just generally losing in life, which is so understandable. These systems keep us in this low vibration. They keep us in a negative state of mind, and the game is rigged, okay? But you're the Messiah. Why do we need to pity someone so powerful? Why is it that Jesus is only considered God when it's convenient and considered man when it's inconvenient for him to be held accountable for coming here and suffering with us instead of actually doing shit about it? Why is his mocking staged as something or presented as something that confirms these people being wrong about Jesus? Because from what I've read, they seem to be making some really valid points. I don't agree with how poorly they treated him. His crucifixion was brutal for sure. I don't like what they did to him. I've never liked it. I mean, why would I? Why is it assumed that I would like it anyway? I feel like I'm just internalizing all this fucking rhetoric of if you question Jesus, you're a fucking Satanist and you love evil and blah, blah, blah. Fuck it, bro. Like, the person who was passing by Jesus in Matthew 27:39 through 44, it says, those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God. In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and elders mocked him. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. And in Mark 15:29 through 32, those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, so, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, come down from the cross and save yourself. And the thing is, right, Jesus needed to be crucified. That was his goal. So it directly cancels out their reasonings, right? But when you look at the bigger picture of it, if God is so powerful, if he is so powerful as well, why does he need to be crucified to begin with? It's very, very, very strange. And I think that Jesus was likely very mentally ill. Very, very mentally ill. And he inherited it from his mother Mary, alongside his delusions of grandeur and narcissism. So Jesus apparently destroyed the temple figuratively, but not literally, okay? And he rebuilt it within his heart. So everyone around him had every reason to believe that this guy is a bullshitter. And as much as I understand the metaphor for what he was getting at, we don't need a metaphorical results. We need practical results. actually do real systematic shit or get the fuck out of my face, bro. And this is why, like, I feel like I don't want Jesus to return and play in my face for a second time. Because as I've looked into it, he hasn't fulfilled any prophecies for him to even be considered a king. He didn't rule. So those people putting purple gowns on him and the crown on him, which was actually really mean. Like, that's so mean. It was probably like sticking up in his flesh and stuff. Like, ew. They had a point for what they were saying, but that was unnecessary cruelty. But then I'd also have to take into account the amount of people Jesus humiliated. And I feel I have mixed feelings about it because he's clearly very mentally ill and he has a very fragile ego, but he keeps pushing. He keeps pushing for his ultimate demise, but it's so strange. It's so strange. Jesus needs to be studied. Like, his brain needs to be studied. When I think of Jesus, I think about how society treats the mentally ill and the delusional. And not all of what they see and experience is false in any way, because he was clearly an activist of some kind, but he wasn't the Messiah. He was not the Messiah. If he didn't make such grandiose claims, I wouldn't bat an eyelash. And his story appeals to people who have been bullied or cast aside, not believed. But then because it stirs up so much emotion within you, few people even wonder if he needed to be believed to begin with, because the man was really delusional. And it feeds into the belief system of someone who would take it way too far. So if someone repeatedly overpromises and then underdelivers, leaving you to be humiliated when your miracles don't work, why is it that you cannot be mocked for your own hypocrisy and your failed promises? Why is it that when people use sarcasm and bring up verifiable things that you did wrong, that they are now the enemy? Why is Jesus such a victim when he's literally God? Why does Jesus get shielded from accountability? Why is being mocked about the actual truth so hurtful? Why does it appeal so much to his followers? Is it because you want to believe him? You want to hold on to the hope that he gave you? You want to hold on to the fact that you're special and you're not like the ones that he let down? Here's the thing. There were powerful people who Jesus stood up against in one way or another. And they probably let him get away with a lot of stuff because they saw that he was mentally ill or fragile. But those people being bad does not make Jesus good. Those people succeeding in what they did to Jesus, well, what Jesus also participated in doing to himself, honestly, because he evaded every opportunity to avoid crucifixion. So Jesus stood up against them. He didn't defeat them. He didn't defeat Rome. And that's somehow still a win. So when Jesus said that when the world rejects you, remember that it rejected him first, it is him admitting to his message initially not being accepted. And all of Jesus's messages should not be accepted. A lot of it is harmful. Some of it seems to be inspired by teachings from other spiritual practices. And that's where the theory of Jesus traveling through Egypt as a teenager and through all of these cities where he learned magic appears. But why would the world reject Jesus if he's that great? Why wouldn't they accept his magic tricks? Why, despite him filling the biblical checklist for being a false prophet, would he be the true Messiah? And why is it accepted for him to be special and not have to fulfill enough prophecies to even qualify? Why does he get a pass? And who are the people pushing him in our faces and lying about his qualifications? I'm under the impression that whoever pushed Jesus obviously had an agenda. I think that's more established than anything. But I'm also believing that the people who follow him have certain personality traits that make them unable to accept the truth about themselves or anything. He attracts people who are prone to being in constant denial about things for one reason or another, but that seems to be his target audience. That seems to be the types of people who believe him because they accept inconsistencies. People who are otherwise cowardly, but through religion, seem to gain this collective power where they can triumph over everyone who didn't believe them. Or, what I'm really saying is the people who saw through their lies. But because this mindset comes with this very strange narcissism where you cannot accept one's failures, Jesus and his followers have a victim complex, but they always view people who see through their lies as their opposers. They always need an opposer. So Jesus is only God's son and human-like whenever he fails. Whenever he succeeds, he's the Messiah. It seems that he very much weaponizes this God in human form against everyone around him at his convenience. When he fails, he's seen through a human lens, and then you pity him because you can relate to being a failure. And there's nothing entirely wrong about being a failure, but I need to exaggerate it so that you understand where I'm coming from. You don't have to succeed at everything. But because you see him through a human lens when he fails, you don't want to hurt his feelings and admit to him nor yourself his shortcomings or call him out on it because he had good intent. But he did not succeed as the Messiah. But if you strictly view him through the lens of being God, you can see that that's some fucking bullshit. And how dare he slap us in the face like that by cosplaying our suffering and not alleviating it. When you make a mistake, you admit that you're human. Maybe you apologize. I cannot recall a single scripture where Jesus apologized, but you're forgiven because of that. And he didn't apologize ever, but weaponized this vulnerability. What archetype of human does something like that? It seems that it would be difficult to keep your sanity around someone like this. Someone who contradicts himself constantly and seems to be entirely inconsistent, indirect, and only uses metaphors to get people to shut up, aka gaslighting. You'd have to be desperate, naive, vulnerable to have faith in someone like this. And those are the people that he targeted because they wouldn't have the articulation to really question him, except Judas, and look what happened to him. Also, Jesus said that you just have to have faith as small as a mustard seed. And in Matthew 13, It says that the tiny mustard seed grows so large that it becomes a tree, so that the birds of the sky come and nest in its branches. And there was a books that were given out when I was really small in this church I used to attend. And it showed that this mustard seed grew into this humongous tree, like Jesus was talking about in the previous verse. And mustard seeds don't do that. They're a crop. You know, the mustard that you use on hot dogs? Those are really small plants. They don't grow into trees. And the irony is, even if it did grow into that tree, it is fruitless. Just like Jesus' words. So what I'm insinuating is that these people relate to Jesus, but have so much cognitive dissonance that they cannot see that they only do so because he's human and he's not God. So they don't really believe that he's God. But they keep him around, or they keep the idea of him being God around to validate and hide away from their true insecurities. And that's all I'm speculating on for now. Okay? You have a great day. I hope child, do something with what's going on in this political climate, okay? Stay safe at all costs. Goodbye.